Ani, bonsoir, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I need a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda. Roger and Dean, all those in favor? Thank you. Any disclosures of pecuniary interests? Seeing none. So this evening, there is a public hearing scheduled for one zoning bylaw amendment. It's for application number ZBA 24-21FR Anin Holding Inc. The Planning Act requires that a public hearing be held before council decides whether or not to pass a zoning bylaw amendment. The public hearing serves two purposes. First, to present to council and the public the details and background of a proposed rezoning, and second, to receive comments from the public and agencies before council's decision is made. Monsieur Dumont will provide a summary of the application. From there, the applicant will be requested to make a presentation in person, followed by questions from the public, either in favor or against the proposal. Council will then have the opportunity to question the applicant, the director of planning, or anyone giving presentations. The zoning bylaw amendment will then be considered for council later on this evening. Monsieur Dumont, would you please provide how public notice was given?
Sorry. To the assessed owners within 120 meters of the property subject to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application tonight, and to those persons and agencies likely to have an interest in the application. The notices were sent on November 5th, 2024, being over 20 days prior to this evening's meeting. Included with the notice was an explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposal and zoning bylaw amendment and a key map showing the location of the subject property.
Thank you. I now declare this portion of the hearing to be a public hearing to deal with application number ZBA 24-21FR Anin Holdings Inc. Monsieur Dumont, would you please summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to this application?
Thank you. So I'm going to do my best to just summarize my report, which is quite lengthy, and it has 4 breakdowns. It talks about the provincial legislation and our new provincial planning statement 2024, which was effectively October 20th of this year. The growth plan for Northern Ontario, and then our local legislation, which is the official plan and the zoning bylaw for the municipality of French River. So it's quite lengthy. So I'm going to just maybe touch on some key points as part of this proposal that's being brought forth to council this evening. And I'd also just acknowledge that we have the agent, Tulloch Engineering, Kevin Jarvis, with us this evening, who's representing Anin Holdings Incorporated. So with that said, to start this, the subject lands are presently zoned special commercial highway 54 with a holding provision H1 under zoning bylaw for the municipality of French River. So I'm going to touch on that in the zoning section of it. I'll give you a little bit of context of what that means. And that was passed by council back in 2009. So in 2009, bylaw 54 speaks to this special holding provision and zone. So again, I'll come to it afterwards. For now, I'm just going to focus on what's being proposed and then tie that back into the report. So the proposed zoning bylaw amendment this evening is to delete the past approvals from 2009 and replace it. That's the intent tonight, is to replace it with something different. And it's kind of scripted in a way where we're combining industrial and commercial. And I'll provide a little bit more context later on as to why it's being proposed this way. So it's looking at a special highway industrial commercial, and it has a specific number to it, which is 108, and a holding provision, which is 2. Again, I'll touch on that later. So the special highway industrial commercial, what's the purpose behind this? Well, it's to permit a 1-story, approximately 50,000 square foot warehouse building and a one-story, approximately 130,000 square foot dry industry building. So that's the intent. We have two structures, 50,000 square feet and 130,000. They both serve different purposes. One's for warehousing and the other's for dry industry. So the permitted uses listed in the commercial highway section, again, as shall still apply. And there's a long list of commercial highway zones. So again, that factors back into 2009 approvals. And in 2009, they wanted the commercial highway permissions, but they also wanted to add some additional uses that didn't exist. And those additional uses that formed part of the bylaw were four items. There was a business or professional office, mini storage for buildings, recreational vehicle storage, and this new use that we're proposing is the dry industry aspect, which is the 130,000 square foot building. Now, along with this is a detailed site plan that's been provided by the agent, which outlines the structures in relation to access of the site. And in here, that when you do a site plan, you also have to speak to certain standards and zones. And so they're also asking for further relief with respect to the zone standards. And those are specifically minimum distance from a residential lot shall be 10 meters. So they're asking relief for that. The maximum building height shall be 15 meters. That's what they're requesting. Again, this is what's being proposed in the bylaw. Development shall proceed by way of site plan control. And so what that means is once you get to a stage of development, the municipality will have an opportunity to find detail, like all the details of the actual site, like landscaping, parking, access to the site. So those are the things that are kind of normal provisions that you would see in this type of development, and that's what's going to be imposed in the bylaw. And so that's the bylaw itself. And when this is all new for council, because you don't rarely see this as holding provision. So this holding provision, like I said, is going to be in place. It's going to be tied to the bylaw, and the municipality will have the ability in the future to remove it. The council will. So it won't go back to the planning board, it's just come right back to council. And the holding provision is a traffic impact study. So, because we don't have that information right now, but we want to kind of be proactive with the development. So the holding provision will say, hey, a traffic impact study is required because we're dealing with MTO. It's a requirement of theirs, not ours. And, but it's going to be, what's key about this, it's going to be the satisfaction of the municipality of French River. Meaning the municipality of French River have the ability, if they're pleased with the outcome of the report, council removes the holding provision and you move on. So that's the purpose behind that, okay? And I did get some legal opinions on that. And in the case of law with planning, that most people in the past have put satisfaction of MTO. But actually, if you were to go to a tribunal, based on my further research and investigation, that the appropriateness would be to the municipality of French River if it was ever to go to that extent, which it shouldn't. So I'm always exploring different things, so I just wanted to share that perspective going forward. Now, with respect to the provincial, I'll just touch on a couple of key points on the provincial legislation. Again, new provincial planning statement of this year. One point is just talking about homes and people, and just wanted to factor in that the municipality of French River adopted their new official plan for the Sudbury East Planning Board back on April 19th of 2023. And the lands were designated as employment, meaning like the changes that we're waiting for the approval from the province would support this. But because we don't have the plan in place today and technically it's not approved, I can't speak to it, but I am speaking to it in a sense. So I'm trying to it's coming through, but I don't know when. So I still have to speak to the rural policy area. But I wanted to share with you that once it's approved, it's going to be the employment policy area, which would technically, support all of this, which provides a wide range of employment uses, including manufacturing, which is what's being proposed, logistics, warehousing, distribution, offices, related industrial and business park uses, exactly what's being proposed here. So I just wanted to share that perspective with you, how that conforms with that policy framework. And then I just wanted to touch on transportation, which is a key key point in this development because we're dealing with Station Road and we're dealing with Highway 64. Again, key points here. There's a lot of things we can be talking about. So from a policy perspective, there's transportation systems as part of a multimodal transportation system, connectivity with transportation. We have Highway 69, which is a Class 2 stage freeway, and we have Highway 64 representing the major components and opportunities for the local economy. And like I touched on, the holding provision will address any details on how that access is going to be with Highway 64 with the traffic impact study and site plan, which will kind of tie into all of that. So again, that conforms with the transportation policies of the province. So now moving forward, let's jump right into the official plan. With the current official plan, I'm going to go back to the current policy framework. Again, there's many different policies with economic development, rail policies, transportation policies. These are all things that I'm factoring because there's an existing rail line, there's transportation, there's servicing, there's capacity. There's many different things to consider as part of this extensive development. So just to kind of just focus on a few key points here, the rural policy area, policy 2.2, 11 and 1, it states industrial uses proposed in the rural area shall be subject to provisions of this policy. So basically it's saying it's supportive. We conform to industrial uses, but you have a checklist of items, A, B, C, D, and E. And some of those items, it says, hey, the proposed use shall meet the requirements and separation distance set out by the Ministry of Environment. So when you have different types of land uses like residential and industrial, you have to have different setbacks, and there are residential in the area. So again, this is the policy framework you want to kind of factor in. The proposed use shall not create or add a negative impact on the environment, adjacent or nearby sensitive land uses or traffic patterns. It also talks about, the proponent shall demonstrate how traffic generated from the proposed use will not impact the existing roads and not have a negative impact, basically. So factored all that in. The agents provided us with wastewater volume calculation per the Ontario Building Code. The municipality of French River has also provided us, you have provided us a capacity report for your lagoon. So those are factors because this is going to be all in private servicing. And the wastewater volume calculation based on 60 employees is under the 10,000 liter threshold. So again, these are reasons why you don't have to go through different avenues. So again, just touching on that. And that's why we're physical services, only dry industries generating less than 10,000 liters per day of domestic waste are permitted on individual services. So again, that ties back into those numbers that have been proposed, which conforms to the policy. And I also noted that the municipality of French River has confirmed that there is sufficient reserve sewage system capacity at the municipal lagoon to accept the halt sewage from the proposed development. So that's all okay. Now just fast forward into the zoning, why we're here this evening. From a zoning perspective, I'll touch on the history, like I said at the start here. So to give everybody a little bit of context on the history. So in 2009, the lands were zoned commercial highway and rural under the old bylaw, which was 2003. The proposal then was to go from to rezone a portion of the rural. So it was already rural back then, and to rezone it to commercial highway with the holding provision 1. The holding provision 1 was this dealing with MTO. Let's just put it that way. The holding provision 1 then, that's why that was in place. But the whole intent was to permit the relocation of an existing commercial enterprise, which had Tim Hortons, gas bar, typically what you're seeing when you drive, the 400 or the en routes that you typically see. That was the intent and purpose, never came to fruition. And it's been like that for 15 years. Fast forward to where we are tonight. So there were provisions made and supported by council in 2009 to go from the rural, a portion of it, to commercial highway, which has all the permissions. And that's where I kind of worked with the agent to strategize and professionally look at the past approvals and consider what the current proposal is and how you tie that in with the current use, that's where we came up. We worked together on the commercial highway component, factoring the existing stuff, and then tying in the industrial aspect to it. and having those, what happens if this proposal doesn't go through, maybe the industrial doesn't go through, maybe you still have the ability to go back to maybe a commercial, an on-route, like you want to have flexibility with the type of uses. And you don't want to come back to council, so that's why it kind of works in that sense. So that's what the intent was back in 2009, to have an existing commercial enterprise at the corner of Highway 69 and Highway 64. And to allow for additional uses, which are still tied into the proposal this evening. In terms of the standards or the requirements under the zone, under the commercial highway zone, the minimum lot frontage, minimum lot area, the lot coverage, these are things that you have to consider for every zone with a proposal. All of them conform. Now, the only ones that, when I look at the setbacks, when you look at the front yard setback, interior, like setbacks from your neighbors, the depth, they all conform as well in relation to the site. So what I'm trying to say is all the standards under this zone conform. Now, the case is being made, there's two that are asking for relief as part of the regulation. And that is with the two permissions. One is maximum building height. So the maximum building height is 11 meters. They're requesting 15 to give you context of the increase. It's 4-meter increase, which is like around 12 feet, 13 feet. And then the other one is the minimum distance from a residential lot. The bylaw says 45 meters. What's being proposed from a residential lot is 10 meters. So that's also being regulated in the bylaw. And those are the only two standards that are asking for amendments to. Everything else conforms. And then in terms of agency comments, again, as part of this process, like I noted earlier, we circulated on the 5th of November. We sent it out to anybody that has an interest in the application. And we received comments from the municipality of French River. There were no concerns in relation to the application. And the big ticket one, I'm not going to go through everything here. There's 4 pages of comments from MTO. So I just wanted to say, in principle, MTO supports access from Station Road. And there's some conditions that, we're going to let staff and everybody else kind of work on. But in principle, I just wanted to stress that MTO does support it. We still have some work to do ahead of ourselves to get to that point. But don't worry about it, basically. And then in terms of that, I've received one email from Betty Newton and have a phone call conversation with her, and emails were exchanged today. Just to give input on that conversation. It dealt with taxes, dealt with Hydro One, dealt with trailers, travel trailers, and also dealt with just access, Station Road. I just addressed all our questions today over the phone and by email. And no other comments were received as the date of this report that's written. So with that said, in summary, the zoning bylaw is consistent with our new provincial planning statement 2024, meets the intent of the official plan for the Sudbury East Planning Board, and conforms to the zoning bylaw for the municipality of French River, therefore can be supported from a planning perspective.
Thank you. Does the applicant have a presentation or wish to say a few words? Of course, to the microphone. Please
There we go.
give your full name and where you're from.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Jarvis. I'm the planning manager at Tulloch Engineering, based out of Sudbury. And certainly, your worship and members of council, it's a pleasure to be in front of you today for a zoning bylaw amendment application of this nature. Certainly, we recognize that it's a significant step forward in terms of planning and development in the area, and certainly represents a significant investment. I'll actually be relatively brief in my comments, only because Mr. Dumont actually did a great job of kind of outlining all of the eccentricities and particulars that come with an application like this. As he said, this is a bona fide planning kind of project, you could say. Lots of considerations, both from a policy perspective around both the 2024 provincial planning statement, as was alluded to, and the existing and the adopted official plan for the municipality of French River. But then also at the same time, there's lots of technical considerations. The MTO, which we've worked very closely with, to discuss any potential upgrades that they may be looking for, or other needs that they might be desirous of course, because this parcel is within their jurisdiction, and other matters everywhere from grading and drainage, and that's of course more on the proponent side, to determine to servicing the lagoon capacity, et cetera, right? So as was said, I'll try to reiterate some of the policy considerations only because I am a registered professional planner. That's what we do. That's why I'm here. So this site-specific zoning for a site-specific highway, industrial, and commercial use is certainly appropriate from many perspectives, and I'll talk about the policy. The current official plan for the municipality of French River does speak to this type of use being in the rural area. It does permit dry industrial usage, which required must be less than 10,000 liters per day of effluent flow. And it does envision also in this specific area along the highway, some value-added zoning, you could say. It's recognizes the intent of the area as being an area of goods movement, an area of potential investment for the municipality. At the same time, as Mr. Dumont alluded to or spoke to, the adopted official plan for the municipality, which we do recognize hasn't been technically approved by the ministry, but it certainly does speak to the intent of municipal council and the board, does certainly speak to this area as being designated quote unquote an employment area. And that's very interesting given the changes that we've seen come out in the 2024 provincial planning statement. I would say in my personal / professional opinion, the most significant change that's happened in the new provincial planning statement would be changes to the employment area policy. Before, you could have employment classified, or employment would include everything from retail to commercial to office spaces. Basically, any employer. You could either have a shoe realtor that would be considered employment use, or you could have, your heaviest industrial type uses. It was classified relatively the same. Now, under the provincial planning statement, it actually better or more specifically defines employment areas as being those areas that are relatively set aside for goods movement and manufacturing and industrial uses. It does not envision those more commercial uses. I'll say the soft retail, the office space. It does not envision those types of uses being in employment areas. So we have a situation with this current parcel where we have a quite site-specific zoning and lots of history around that with the commercial highway zone. A policy that speaks to that, or the uses that were permitted in that highway commercial zone as being employment historically under the 2020 provincial policy statement, that would have been employment. Now they flipped the switch, and if I could say, certainly in my professional opinion, the application that's before you today very much meets with exactly that intent of the flipping of the switch in the 2024 provincial planning statement. Given that the adopted official plan shows this area as employment, that has been adopted. It's been certainly, I'll say, vetted through the consultant that did that work, and obviously through Mr. Dumont's office. There's an understanding or a appreciation for the value of these lands being more for employment type purposes. That's from a few perspectives. Of course, goods movement is one. Second is connectivity with other municipalities and other regions in this area, both 64 and 69 corridors, not just the 69 corridor, certainly. And it also provides the access which is required for these types of uses. Given Station Road, it's not a local road with residential type development on it, so it checks all the boxes, you could say, in terms of an appropriate location for employment uses, pursuant to how the provincial planning statement now views these types of areas. With regard to the efforts that we've gone through with the Ministry of Transportation, we've had numerous meetings, of course, discussions with them, correspondences back and forth, which you'll see some of the comments in the report, I'm sure. But to summarize all of those efforts, what is truly needed here is already described through the holding symbol, which is proposed for this site-specific zoning. The holding symbol would require, as Mr. Dumont again has said, a traffic impact study be completed to the satisfaction of the municipality. the traffic impact study would consider any highway improvements or any local road improvements that may be necessary to ensure that the local road network and the highway network is not impacted by the proposed development. And the way that you would tie the requirement to complete those upgrades to being able to obtain a building permit for this end development would be through the MTO's permit control and building and land use permit process that they can require certainly proponents to go through. This is within their permitting corridor area. It's within the setback to the highway. So any development on these lands would require that permit. It's just the traffic impact study should be completed to ensure that before the principle of zoning is completely established here in terms of removing holding symbols and kind of the permission being as of right, you could say, that traffic impact study just has to look at the local road network, make sure that that principle of development is not going to harm or hinder the local road network. And if there is any concerns around that, it will provide recommendations for upgrades, which the MTO would be able to require and facilitate again through their own processes. So you can see a little bit of the eccentricities in terms of roles and responsibilities with that, while the lifting of the hold would be within the municipality's jurisdiction. That's because the zoning bylaw is within the municipality's jurisdiction, you could say, if I can put it that way. And then the MTO would still benefit from that traffic study showing what has to be done to, again, ensure that there's no negative impact. So perhaps I'll leave it there. Just a very quick summary. Again, the 2020 PPS, or I'm sorry, the currently in effect official plan for the area does have permissions for this, or is cognizant of a dry industrial type use. The adopted official plan certainly is calling for exactly, I would say, this type of use in this location. And the 2024 provincial planning statement very much supports, again, that intended employment area designation in the adopted official plan. So with that, I'm very happy to answer any questions, and I really appreciate council's time.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'll open it to council if you have any questions or comments. No. I just want to say one thing. We're all very excited about this new development, and this council recently approved a strategic plan, and every decision that we make has to fall within the strategic plan. And this proposal definitely falls into it, as it says here. It's creating a thriving and engaged community by achieving the right balance between growth, which I think this is it, and preservation. And I think that this industry will provide both and falls well within our strategic plan. And for that, we're very thrilled to welcome this new addition to our community. So thank you.
And if I may, I also know that the property owners are very excited by this development, and really appreciate the municipality's support and collaboration through this process.
Thank you. Well, please express our gratitude to them as well. No other comments? So if there's no other comments or further questions, I declare this public hearing to be concluded. It's now in order for a council member to make a motion and for council to consider the application. Boy, I see the hands flying right up. Roger and Bob. Roger and Bob, yeah.
Moved and seconded, be it resolved that bylaw 2024, 49, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 2014 as amended, be read first, second, and third time and finally passed.
Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. Please be advised that there is a 20-day appeal period, during which time a specified person, public body or registered owner may not later than 20 days after the day that the giving of the written notice as required by section 34-18 of the Planning Act is completed, appeal to the Ontario Lands Tribunal by filing with the clerk of the municipality a notice of appeal setting out the objections to the bylaw and the reasons in support of the objection, accompanied by a fee prescribed under the Ontario Lands Tribunal. During this appeal period, no building permit may be issued or other work commenced. And at this time, I need a mover and a seconder to adjourn. Renee and Dave. All those in favor? Thank you.